They've been struggling. They were 3-6 over the last 9 games, in danger of kind of doing what they did last year, which is a nosedive outside of the NCAA tournament. Now they've got another huge win that probably locks them into the NCAA tournament. Does this change your tune first before we get to Carolina and their number 1 seed hopes with the Clemson Tigers?
No. It also doesn't put them in the NCAA tournament, right? Like there's still a month of basketball to be played. And finally, they played like the team they were the first 2 months of the season. So I've thought they're a tournament team the entire year. And obviously, you get the league play, and they've taken some body blows there and taken actually some knockout shots. They got to get it turned around. This is a gigantic win that it does eliminate a couple of the losses and makes you feel better. Not just beating Carolina, beating them on the road, and then the historic implications of only doing it for the second time, whether it was Carmichael or the Dean Dome. That's a huge win for this program. It should turn the ship around, but the challenge to this whole thing, and I know you want to talk about South Carolina, we'll do so. I mentioned this yesterday. The impressive part about South Carolina is that South Carolina beat Kentucky and then went and beat Tennessee on the road, and now they keep it going, right? As opposed to, I don't know, you take Kansas beats Houston, turns around, loses to Kansas State. We've seen so many teams pull off an upset. Georgia Tech, they beat North Carolina, and then they get blown out by Wake Forest. So can you do it and keep winning afterwards? One win does not a season make, does not an NCAA tournament resume make. It's about consistency, and then can you pluck off the top-level teams? Clemson showed they could do that. Let's see if they can show some consistency moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, when they have P.J. Hall and Joe Girard both on, they're pretty tough to beat. And Ian Shiflin is tough in there, right? He plays hard. I feel like with them, again, if Girard's not making shots, P.J. Hall has struggled a little bit, especially from the line at times over the last month. I started to see it when they were at home against Carolina in a game that they lost, that they didn't shoot it well. But, if this team has Hall and Girard rolling, Doug, they're capable of beating just about anybody, certainly in the league. I'm not sure in the country, but they're certainly capable, as they've shown, of beating anybody in the league. And now they've got confidence. My question to you now goes to North Carolina. Do you still trust the Tar Heels like you trusted them maybe 2 weeks ago before the road loss to Georgia Tech and now this home setback to Clemson? Or was this more of just one of those games that it was almost a hangover after beating Duke at home?
Oh, I definitely think there's a hangover. I don't think anybody would deny that. There's also Joe Girard's a grown-up. Like, he's got an AARP card. Elliot Kadu could still be in high school. So I think that's one of the things you run into. Because Baycott was good. Like, the issue wasn't – you and I had talked previously about Baycott and his consistency. Cormac Ryan couldn't hit the broadside of a barn last night. That was a big problem, right? You're brought in to make shots as a shooter, and you don't. And I thought Kadu really struggled to guard Joe Girard and then to do anything offensively. And sometimes that's going to happen. And then the bench, Seth Trimble gave him 10 against Duke. The bench gave him nothing. So the old issues kind of popped up. Cormac Ryan didn't shoot the basketball well. And they ended up getting beat by an older Clemson team that made a bunch of shots. But no, this doesn't really change. I've told you, I like Carolina. I wasn't in love with Carolina. I don't think they're at that super high tier. I know they beat Duke, and that was a high-level basketball game, but I don't put them at the UConn level or even at the Purdue level. I like Carolina, but they're flawed. Flawed is not a lot of a bench. Flawed is very dependent upon, a couple of their shooters to make shots, and they have a 19-year-old point guard who's really good, but he's struggled to score, and he's going to be 3, 4, 5 years younger than a lot of the guys he's going against when you get to the high level of the NCAA tournament.
All right, South Carolina gets another win over Ole Miss at home. Maybe not nearly as big as the one against Kentucky in Columbia or the one on the road against Tennessee, but nonetheless, another one. They're 20-3. Where are you now with the Gamecocks in terms of being a legitimate threat in the NCAA tournament?
Like to win the whole thing?
No. To get Sweet 16.
That's what a legitimate
Well,
I mean,
for
they got
South
dudes.
Carolina, it is. Yeah, for South Carolina, if they go to the Sweet 16 now, again, the only time they've made the tournament in the last 20 years, Frank Martin took them to the Final Four. That was obviously a one-off. Can this Clemson team and this Clemson program sustain
I mean,
itself?
South Carolina.
Going
South
forward?
Carolina. South Carolina.
I'm sorry.
South Carolina.
I'm sorry.
Don't do that.
Thank you.
Don't do that.
Thank you.
Like you like visiting South Carolina.
I do.
Hey,
I do.
You're like a quasi-resident of Charleston, and now you're calling like the arch rival of South Carolina their name?
Not good.
Not good, Jim. Especially when you're trying to give them respect. Look, Lamont's done a really good job, and I thought last night. I actually think more of last night's win in many ways than the Kentucky win. You know, that's my feeling. Last night was incredibly impressive. Again, everybody gets up for Kentucky. Everybody. The freshman was a Colin Murray Boyles. He was outstanding last night. I thought they got after it defensively. Ole Miss is not easy to play against. You know, I know they've had their flaws on the road, but they have older dudes, and obviously we all know Chris does a great job. Like, I think South Carolina is a team that's in the NCAA tournament, and we've all talked about the level of athletic talent that's in the SEC. I don't think there's any reason that you shouldn't think, hey, this should be a second weekend team. You can beat Tennessee at Tennessee. You can beat Kentucky. You beat Ole Miss. Like, who can't you beat outside of the maybe uber elite in college basketball? I don't really know what there is left to prove. This is a real basketball team with the Gamecocks.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little Rick Pitino comments. We'll also take a look at tonight's slate, which is absolutely loaded. Goodman versus Gottlieb next. All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb. It is Wednesday afternoon, but one Hall of Famer, Rick Pitino, made some news when on Monday a National Labor Relations Board regional director issued a landmark ruling that could shatter the NCAA's amateurism model. Dartmouth men's basketball players, yes, Dartmouth men's basketball players, are now considered university employees under U.S. labor law. Therefore, they're eligible to unionize. This led to a couple tweets from Rick Pitino, the St. John's head coach, on the issue and how to fix NIL in college basketball. All right. Douglas, read these tweets from Rick Pitino, who basically says, okay, we all want solutions to preserve our great game. Today, I'm going to suggest solutions. Solution one, for basketball, have the Power 5 and Big East Conference commissioners get together and create a salary cap between $1.5 million and $2 million. All contracts delivered to the league and school offices. All other conferences establish their own salary cap. All right, what do you think?
I mean, I think that's the way we're trending. I mean, like, look, I tweeted this and I mean it. If Dartmouth's men's basketball team are employees, they should all be fired immediately because they're awful. Okay? They're awful. You want to be an employee? Fine. You do realize employees can be terminated, okay, with and without cause. Okay? So there's so much to dive into that people don't really realize. And this is all the talk, which is, it feels this is the way we're trending, right? We're getting to where they're going to be employees. Are they going to still have to go to school? If they have to go to school, are they going to have to pay their own way for school? Right? What happens to the tax shelter loophole that college athletics has? Right? Remember, you're going to have to start paying taxes on things. Like the NLRB has been looking for a mark to use for this propaganda for a long time. I find it ironic they use it for Dartmouth that are non-scholarship athletes in the Ivy League. The Ivy League actually does it the old-fashioned way, and in many people's belief, the right way, because you get so much more out of your education than just playing basketball. But nonetheless, what do I think? I think what Rick Pitino is saying is what a lot of people are acquiescing to, which is at some point make them employees. At some point, you're going to have, you're going to have to collectively bargain. And once you collectively bargain, that's where the salary cap, whatever, will fall. The problem with those numbers, 1.5 to 2 million, which are real numbers that most people think you have to be competitive, is there are going to be plenty of conferences that can't pay that. And then, of course, you're going to have the SEC and the Big Ten. They're going to say that we can pay more. But something has to give, because the ruling that allows for the two-time transfers to play, which happened in West Virginia, ironically, it's over. So you can transfer whenever you want. You can't run a sport this way. You can't run a team this way, where you're constantly having to worry about recruiting your players and recruiting off the – you can't. So what will likely happen, I think, is they'll collectively bargain and players will get way less than they're currently getting. That's the way that negotiations work. And you'll have – if you unionize, again, I've been a member of a union, the Screen Actors Guild, okay? In order to work in network television, you have to be a union. I got benefits out of the union. They're not as good as the benefits I had when I worked at Disney. So I think in many ways, what you have lawyers and adults pushing for these kids to get sounds like a great deal. The problem is that most of that stuff they already get, and now there's going to be limits because it's going to be collectively bargained. We're in a transition phase where people are trying to figure out. We've quite obviously professionalized college sports. I don't think for the better. I don't. I do think there are some really good things you can take from it. Zach Edey staying at Purdue, okay, is one of them. I think there's some great things that come up. Max Asmith is still in college. That's a great thing. Tiny guards, big guys that don't have a home in the NBA can have a home and be profitable in college basketball, keep them in school longer. That's great. But all this other stuff, taxes, remember, you're an employee. all of these benefits you receive can be taxed. There's a lot to it. But yes, what Rick Pitino is saying is what's being echoed throughout most college basketball programs. There has to be some sort of salary cap. There has to be real contracts. And with those real contracts, there has to be clauses that get enacted so that you can bring players back. And if you want to fire them, if you want to terminate them, you can terminate them with and without cause. There'll be buyouts. There'll be non-compete clauses. And that's all that transferring is when you had to sit out. That's a non-compete clause. That will happen, and that will stabilize the sport. But getting there is going to be a really, really tough slog because the side that's pushing for this thinks that, all right, you just pick all the things you want, and that's what you get. We want to get paid. We don't want limits. We want insurance in perpetuity. Like, we want to transfer whatever we want. Like, that ain't how negotiations work. So it's going to take a while, but I'm guessing eventually that's where we land.
And it is crazy that Dartmouth, one of the worst programs on the planet right now, their men's basketball program, is the one that's going to kind of change this. All they do is lose money. I mean, honestly, all they do is lose money. They're not making any money. Nobody's going to the Dartmouth men's basketball games. Again, there are a few programs and some players that are certainly going to benefit from this, Doug, but most of them, it's not going to help them because are they going to get cost of attendance? All these kids. No,
Yes.
they're not going to get that. They're not going to get cost of attendance.
No. So
anymore.
listen. Again, probably not. It'll all end up. So just for people to understand how it works, okay? When a coach, and coaches aren't supposed to be involved in these negotiations. So sometimes it's a third party. A lot of times it's coaches. But they, the way it really works is they say, well, he's making $100,000. But really, it's a monthly check, okay? And what is in that monthly check is Pell Grant, if they qualify for it, cost of attendance. There's something called the Alston Act, which is you can come up with whatever academic threshold they have to cross over to get, which is like $6,000 a year, okay? And then there's NIL from the collective, which some of it is real NIL, most of it is just pay for play. But anyway, what happens is you get $1,000, plus you get your scholarship check as well, and then you put the NIL in it, and it's $125. It's not really $100,000 or really $120. It's really like $50,000 more than they were already getting. Again, the dirty little secret is college athletes were already getting cost of attendance. College athletes are already getting Alston Act. College athletes are already getting the scholarship money to live off campus. So no one was going hungry. This is just money on top of it. And I think the other part you're going to find is that it sounds good to say, hey, we're at St. John's, $1.5 million to $2 million. And I think most of those schools can afford it. DePaul will have to pony up. Some of the bottom schools have to pony up. But there's lots of other schools that are sitting there going like, are you kidding? We don't have any money. Like, no money. Zero. No dollars.
Like Boston College in the ACC, Doug, cannot compete. Now, they never could. They never could with Duke and Carolina. But now you've got, salary cap. But I guess it's like the pros. It's like the Yankees.
Why can't they? Why can't they? I think Boston College, the reason that they can't compete is they want to be good at hockey.
Who cares? No.
Well, yes, but they care about hockey. No. They do care about hockey. Okay.
Yeah, but that's again, not why. It's a pro sports town. Nobody cares.
Right. Well, it has nothing to do with the town, though. It has to do with the donors, right? The donors care. That's all that matters. Okay, the donors care.
You got to find.
What happens?
You got to find.
But what's happened at Vanderbilt, at Stanford, at Northwestern is like, what? There's no return on investment in this thing. The crazy part about Dartmouth or the Ivy League is all of those student athletes, they get a ton out of playing for Dartmouth. They wouldn't have gotten to Dartmouth without being a student athlete, right? And then the rest of their life, they get to say, I graduated from an Ivy League school, right? And Dartmouth actually is a really cool Ivy League school. Animal House is based upon Dartmouth. It sounds like a good time. They're just not very good at basketball. But yeah, this thing is wild. But I hope people understand that the money that you're being told they make, they don't really make. I'm guessing that in filing it through the school, it allows schools to use some of those same monies, so they're not really coming out of pocket. I do think that going through the school could help a Boston college because they are swimming in money because they charge $75,000 a year. But the problem with it is that schools have their own, it's not a constitution, but they have their own bylaws that there's certain amounts of money they can't spend on sports. And now can they spend it on employees around sports? I don't know. Like there's just so much you have to go through, but you're completely changing the fabric of sports. And here's the biggest difference, okay? You and I have been around this thing long enough to know the best of the best young recruits, they were always getting something. The difference now is you have guys that can't play, don't play, that are demanding that they get their piece of the pie. And believe it or not, that has the opposite of the intended effect on alumni, because they're like, I give it the NIL, it goes to this kid, he doesn't play, and he doesn't really care about my school, and now I'm bitter, and I don't want to give next year. And then, oh yeah, by the way, what happens when you call me about another sport? What happens when you call me about, you want a facility or something on campus? Like, all of these things are real issues that we're pushing really quickly towards this professional model, and it's going to cut off half the universities. And oh yeah, by the way, there's going to be collective bargain. It changes the whole thing when taxes get involved as well.
All right, let's go back to on the court a little bit. And the Big 12, the best league in America, we know that. Deep, they could get 10 teams in. Last night, Baylor beats Texas Tech in Waco. Big win for the Bears.
How are my picks?
I don't remember.
I took Baylor. I took Iowa State on the road. I took Baylor. I took Iowa State on the road.
You got them both. And Baylor, I took as well. Iowa State, I think I took the Longhorns in that one. And the Jekyll and Hyde Longhorns disappointed me, unable to hold serve at home. Oklahoma beats BYU, no surprise there at home. Texas now 4-6 in league play. And listen, this is a team, and I know you've kind of told me, Rodney Terry, we went through it last year, all right, with Rodney Terry. And what I said was, I don't know if he's the right guy for long term, but I felt like they had to give it to him for short term because of what he did last season. You kind of pushed back on me a little bit, but Texas is a team with enough talent to be better right now than stuck ahead of only your Oklahoma State Cowboys and the West Virginia Mountaineers, who are a complete mess.
There's no question. No question. I like Rodney. I like that staff. They should be better. This kind of feels like old Texas, when they get pushed around a little bit. No, where they're talented, but they get pushed around a little bit and they don't know how to. No. And their whole mantra last season, when Beard was the coach, was don't be a.
Don't be
the
soft.
word that people use.
Don't be soft.
Don't be soft. Don't be soft. Because he knows that's the reputation of Texas. And I don't think that Rodney teaches soft. His teams weren't soft when he was the head coach at Fresno or at UTEP. But I think there is something to Texas. And again, this is part of the NIL thing. When there's an amount of entitlement where everybody's getting paid handsomely, you got the best of the best. Are you as gritty as some of these other teams? And the answer is no. I think they're going to continue to struggle, and it's not because they don't have the skill. There's something missing with this group in terms of toughness and leadership that hasn't been able to evolve to being back to the championship level that they were at for most of last year.
All right, let's go with some games tonight. Good games, Doug, on the slate, and we'll start with the Alabama-Auburn game. You were at the first one in Tuscaloosa. Now they go to Auburn. Do you expect a little payback from Bruce Pearl and company?
Yes, I do. They hopped out. Their starters were better. I thought he oversubbed in that game. But Auburn at home, different animal. Alabama, not tough enough defensively on the road. I like Auburn.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. All right, Creighton goes to Providence, where the Friars just haven't been the same probably since Bryce Hopkins went down with that season-ending injury. Can they hold court? Yeah, up and down. So can Providence, this is actually a really interesting game, because if Providence wins this one, it's big for their NCAA tournament hopes. Do they hold court at the Amica Center and the dunk?
I think they do. Creighton's lack of depth and they're so 3-point dependent. I like Providence as a home dog tonight.
I'm going Creighton in this one with a road win.
Okay.
Nebraska at Northwestern, another big game. Both teams. These are two teams that are probably going to be fighting to get in the tournament. At the end of the day, Nebraska travels to Evanston. Who do you like?
Nebraska, historically bad road team, no matter who the coach is. Northwestern better at home. Obviously, a confluence of styles here with Nebraska shooting all those threes. I like Northwestern, but in a close game. So it would be, if we're doing the lines, Nebraska to cover, Northwestern to win.
Yeah, listen, I'll give Chris Collins credit. He's done a great job building a strong home court in Evanston. I think as well the Wildcats win this one in a close game. All right, thanks for joining us. Goodman versus Gottlieb. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern, every weekday on Stadium.